Why do you still think about them, even when you know they were wrong for you? It's a question that haunts you in the quiet moments. You've played back the red flags. You've told your friends, "I'm done." But still, their name lingers. Their memory pulls at you when you least expect it. Why? It's not just your heart. It's your brain. Let's talk about intermittent reinforcement. It's a psychological loop that's so powerful, casinos build their entire business model on it. When someone gives you affection inconsistently, hot one moment, cold the next, your brain doesn't process it as confusion. It processes it as potential. Hope. The next win could be just one pull away. That's how slot machines hook you. That's also how people do. Each time they disappear and then suddenly reappear with love, apologies, or charm, your brain lights up with dopamine, the chemical tied to pleasure and reward. It creates a cycle of craving where your body literally aches for their attention, even if it's unhealthy. You're not just remembering them, you're remembering the high. And here's the kicker. The inconsistency makes the attachment stronger. Predictable love is safe, but unpredictable love is addictive. You don't know who you'll get, the sweet version, the distant one, the cruel one followed by the kind one. That emotional roulette is what your brain keeps spinning even after the relationship ends. So no, you're not crazy for still thinking about them. You're not broken. You've just been conditioned. The brain craves patterns it was trained to chase, but recognition is the first step to breaking the loop. Next, we'll dive into the mental itch called unfinished business and why your mind clings to what it can't resolve. What if it's not them you miss, but the ending you never got? That's the strange thing about closure. We think it's a final conversation, a mutual understanding, a sense of peace. But more often, it's an illusion, something we chase, because the relationship ended without answers, without fairness, or without our voice being heard. Psychologists call it the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds naturally fixate on incomplete tasks more than ones that are resolved. And heartbreak, especially the kind that ends in confusion or betrayal, becomes an emotional task your brain keeps trying to finish. You replay arguments, you rewrite what you should have said, you look for hidden meanings in their last message. It's not because you want them back, it's because your mind is trying to understand. We crave clarity, not because it changes what happened, but because it gives us something to anchor our pain to. When someone walks away without explanation, or with a vague excuse like, "I'm not ready," or "you deserve better," it leaves a gap. And that gap becomes a breeding ground for rumination. You might tell yourself, "If I just understood why, I could let go." But here's the truth. Even with a perfect explanation, closure is rarely satisfying. Because what we're really looking for isn't answers, it's validation. We want to know our love mattered, that we weren't crazy, that what we felt was real. But waiting for closure from someone who hurt you is like waiting for fire to put itself out. Sometimes the only closure you get is the one you create yourself. And that begins by realizing that their silence is an answer, and that your peace doesn't depend on their permission. Up next, we'll explore a darker reason you might still feel connected: trauma bonds, and why they're so hard to break, even when the love was toxic. Why does it still hurt? And why does part of you still want them back? That's the trap of a trauma bond, a connection that's forged not through trust or safety, but through cycles of pain and relief. These relationships aren't always violent or dramatic. Sometimes they just feel like emotional whiplash. One day, you're everything to them. The next, they're cold, distant, or even cruel. And then, they're back again. Apologizing, acting like nothing happened, promising change. This cycle releases powerful chemicals in your brain, not just dopamine, but cortisol and oxytocin. Cortisol rises during the stress of the fight or the silence. Oxytocin floods your system when they return with affection. Over time, your body becomes conditioned to this emotional roller coaster, and your nervous system starts interpreting chaos as connection. That's what makes trauma bonds so confusing. They don't feel like abuse. They feel like intensity, like passion, like something deep and powerful. You mistake adrenaline for chemistry. The pain becomes familiar, and in a strange way, you start to feel safer in the storm than you do in peace. What's even harder? When you try to leave, you experience withdrawal, just like breaking an addiction. Your body craves the highs. Your mind gaslights you. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe they'll change. Maybe this time will be different. But here's the truth. Love shouldn't feel like survival. You shouldn't need to prove your worth just to be treated decently. And if your relationship kept swinging between heaven and hell, that wasn't love. That was a bond forged in dysfunction. Trauma bonds don't break with time alone. They break with awareness, boundaries, and often help from people who can see clearly what you've been taught to normalize. Coming up next, we'll talk about one of the sneakiest reasons you can't move on: nostalgia and the dangerous illusion of the good times. Were the good times really that good? Or is your memory just playing favorites? When we look back on a relationship, especially one that ended in pain, we don't always remember it accurately. We remember the laughter, the butterflies, the nights they held us when the world felt heavy. We replay the way they looked at us during the best moments, and we cling to those highlights like they tell the full story. This is called nostalgia bias, and it's one of the biggest traps that keeps us emotionally stuck. Your brain, in its effort to protect you from pain, often filters out the bad and romanticizes the good. It's selective memory, and it's powerful. You might forget how often you cried yourself to sleep, but remember the one time they surprised you with flowers. You might downplay the anxiety they caused you daily, but cling to the way they once said, "I'll never leave." We stitch together a fantasy version of the person, not who they really were, but who we hoped they would become. And when we're lonely, that fantasy feels safer than the reality we're left with. But here's the truth. No one is all good or all bad. Even toxic people can have kind moments. But moments don't make a healthy relationship. Patterns do. So if you find yourself stuck in a loop, missing only the highs, take a step back. Make a list. Write down what hurt you, what they did, what they failed to do, how they made you feel when you needed them most. Compare that to the version of them your mind keeps trying to sell you, because often it's not them we miss. It's the story we told ourselves about what they could have been, and what we thought the future might look like. In the final section, we'll talk about how to break the loop, reclaim your peace, and finally stop giving so much mental space to someone who's no longer in your life. So how do you finally stop thinking about them? First, understand this. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about retraining your brain. When you think of them, you're not just missing a person. You're missing a feeling, a fantasy, or a version of yourself that existed when they were in your life. Breaking the loop means you start choosing truth over illusion. Here's how you begin. Step 1. Go no contact, or at the very least, remove their access to you. Not as a punishment, but as protection. Every message, every social media post, every scroll through old photos is another hit to the obsession loop. You can't move forward while you're still feeding the past. Step 2. Rewrite the story. Journal what actually happened. Not the romanticized version, but the full picture. What did they give, and what did they take? What patterns kept repeating? Remind yourself of the pain, not just the passion. Step 3. Replace the ritual. If you used to check your phone every morning for a text, replace that ritual with something healing. Meditation, movement, journaling, cold water, even just going outside. You're not erasing memories. You're rewiring habits. Step 4. Seek deeper healing. If you suspect you were caught in a trauma bond or unresolved attachment style, don't go it alone. Therapy, support groups, books, these aren't signs of weakness. They're acts of reclaiming your mind. And finally, remind yourself over and over that their absence is not your loss. It's your opportunity. You don't miss them. You miss the person you hoped they would become. You miss the version of yourself who still believed that love wouldn't hurt. But you're not that person anymore. You're wiser. You're waking up, and you're allowed to let go. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Love Loop, because healing isn't a straight line, but you don't have to walk it alone.